Welcome to Scenario Modeling Part 2, Tips and Tricks for Scenario Planning. Recent events have increased the need to model multiple scenarios for the future. With Oracle Hyperion Planning, you can quickly produce numerous what-if models. First, we need to determine what to model. To do this, we look at our sources of revenue and expense and determine the questions we need to answer. According to McKinsey, we need to ensure that liquidity is sufficient to weather the storm. Businesses need to define scenarios tailored to the company's context. For the critical variables that will affect revenue and cost, they can define input numbers through analytics and expert input. Companies should model their financials, cash flow, P&L, and balance sheet in each scenario and identify triggers that might significantly impair liquidity. For each such trigger, companies should define moves to stabilize the organization in each scenario, optimizing accounts payable and receivable, cost reduction, divestments, and mergers and acquisitions. Develop your questions based on your business drivers. Determine if the driver data that you need is available. Are there new drivers that need to be considered and included? Security of the modeling will need to be considered. Since this may be sensitive information, you should consider who will have access to it. These are high-level steps to creating the new models. Make a backup for safety. Turn off any processes you don't want distributing data. Add members to your version or scenario dimension for the new what-if models. Apply security as appropriate. Create new calculations, forms, and dashboards as needed for the new models. Create a backup of the application for safety. Think through the what-ifs you want to model. Determine their criteria and create sufficient scenarios and versions for modeling them. Once you know what you need to model, create the scenarios and versions. Depending on your existing calculations, you may need to add accounts and formulas to calculate variable expenses. If your existing access groups are not adequate, add new groups and assign access appropriately. For any new rules that need to be created to copy and adjust data, use these technical tips. Use copy data. Use runtime prompts and substitution variables. Use fix on the forecasted years and periods. If you already have a driver-based model, use those rules. And use rules instead of member formulas if you need to apply new logic. Update existing variables to include the new scenarios and versions. Add the new scenarios and versions to your existing forms if possible. Otherwise, create new forms using them. Once you have your system set up with the new scenarios and versions, run through these steps to populate and calculate the new models. Copy the data from your source scenario and version to the new target scenarios and versions. For example, from forecast working to best case version 1. Adjust your drivers, run your scenario calculations, refresh forms and reports to review the new results. Use SmartView for ad hoc analysis. Repeat these steps as needed for the new scenarios and versions you have added. Go to NRL.com/updates and stay up to date on all the latest information as it changes.